With me today, I have the wonderful Mel Mason. She is the clutter expert. Mel, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here with you.
Brilliant. First, very easy question. Where in the world are you?
Where in the world is Mel Mason? She right now is currently sitting in San Diego, California, USA.
Wonderful, a very wonderful city that I've yet to visit one day. So, talk about clutter expert. How did that come about?
You want the short version or the long version?
Always the long version.
Well, I was actually the cluttered mess growing up. I had clutter all over my room. You couldn't walk in my room. My entire floor was covered. You would be taking your own life into your hands if you decided to walk into my room. Most people would have pathways. I didn't. Um, it was just the entire floor was covered, and you would step on things and hurt your foot and break things, all the things like that. And I was also a cluttered mess on the inside at the same time. I didn't realize that my outsides were really just reflecting my insides. And it took years for me to realize that. But really, I started as the cluttered mess, and I found out how to keep the clutter from coming back and to start organizing spontaneously and effortlessly without having to get stressed or feel overwhelmed about it. That's how I wound up launching my business. I started as the cluttered mess and I figured my way out. And so here we are.
That's amazing. And you've already raised a really good point around being cluttered on the inside and that affects your outside. Can we dig into that a bit more? So, people don't often realize that clutter can be a reflection of your mental health state. What made you understand that it perhaps was something that was a problem for you?
Yeah, so I didn't actually get it at first because as a kid, as the cluttered mess, I wasn't really thinking I wanted to do anything with my clutter. Like I was looking at this is just the way that I live. I could care less because I didn't really want to even be living in that moment. I wasn't ready to like end my life, but my life had so much trauma and loss early on that I just didn't care about living anymore. And that really reflected on my outsides. And then there was an event that happened that was almost the nail in my coffin. And I was 15 years old. My older brother committed suicide. And when he committed suicide, he also left all of his belongings for me to go through. And at that point, I was a mess myself. So it was like me going through all of my brother's stuff and deciding what I got to keep and what I got to give away and all those things. And it became just so overwhelming that I finally had a plan in place and I was going to end my life. And my high school was like, yeah, I think you go need to get some intensive therapy before you come back here. So I got to go live in a residential treatment center for adolescents for the next year and a half of my life. And while I was living there, I got introduced to yoga and mindfulness. And ultimately, what yoga and mindfulness taught me was how to become willing to look at what I call the inner clutter, all of the stuff that accumulates from traumatic events in our lives, the unprocessed emotions, the limiting beliefs, and the stories that we make up about ourselves as well. And what happened for me as a result of being willing to look at all of that inner clutter was that without ever planning it, without ever scheduling it, without ever thinking, oh, I should really clean my room, what I found was I just started to spontaneously and effortlessly need to have order in my life. And so within about a year's time, I went from someone where you couldn't walk in my room to someone who had to have a place for everything and everything needed to be in its place. And it took me years to realize like that's what happened when I got the idea years later to launch my business. But when I looked back, that's what happened is that it happened from the inside out, not the outside in. Because my mom would clean my room all the time. But what would inevitably happen is that it would go right back to looking the way that it was, where you couldn't walk on the floor again. But when it happened from the inside out, it happened effortlessly and spontaneously. It was almost like this compulsion where I couldn't stop myself from doing it. And I never like was planning it. And I thought it was kind of a fluke. But then when I started working with my clients and started teaching them what I did and they started getting the same results, I'm like, oh, this really works. It wasn't just me. Like, wow, okay, so we know how to create order out of chaos and we know how to keep the clutter from coming back. Let's do this.
Brilliant, brilliant. There can be two ends of the scale, can't there? So obviously clutter reflects the inside, but also OCD at the other end of having everything having a place, everything has to go somewhere. So did you ever have to navigate yourself that balance between going from one extreme to another one, or do you see it in your clients sometimes?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So one of the things that I love to talk about is that we live in a world of duality. And so there's always two sides to every coin. And so on one end of the spectrum, you would have extreme hoarding tendencies with the clutter and the filth, not being able to walk in, like all the way to like trash and dishes piling up. That's one end of the extreme. The other end of the extreme is the extreme OCD. Everything has to have a place, be in its place. Don't move it. Don't let a speck get anywhere, like super rigid. But they're manifestations of the same internal condition. They just different manifestations, but they're on the same spectrum. And so some clients are super OCD and rigid, and other people are have tons of clutter, disorganization, and trash and chaos all over the place. So regardless of the manifestation, it's still from the same root.
Interesting. And I suppose each one is about a different kind of control. One is the control to not care, and the other one is to control to keep everything in place. Now, when you work with your clients and you see, do you tend to see more of the clutter behavior, obviously because of what you do, or have you seen both? And if you do both, how do you approach them differently?
You know, they're mostly people with a lot of clutter, but the OCD side definitely happens. But the treatment is the same, because no matter what manifestation clutter is showing up as, because it's also not just the OCD rigid and the extreme clutter. There's other manifestations like being overweight, being too busy, not having enough time, all the different types of addictions, whether it be simply just scrolling on social media or Netflix binging, to needing to have that glass or two of wine every night, to hardcore drugs and pornography, right? So addictions, then the debt cycle, people getting into debt, out of debt, into debt, out of debt. Or the relationship cycle, we get into an unhealthy relationship and we get out of it, and then we're in another relationship, but it's really the same relationship, just a different face, right? So these are all the different manifestations that this internal clutter will show up as. So if some of your listeners are like, I don't have clutter, but they're like, oh, I got like 20 extra pounds on my body, or, oh, I'm always saying I don't have enough time. I'm too busy. Like, I just don't have the time. Or I'm in debt up to my eyeballs in credit card debt and I don't know how I'm going to get out of it. Like, you may relate to some other ways, but the root all is the same. It's what I call inner clutter. And that is, to be clear, it's limiting beliefs, unprocessed emotions from traumatic events and losses. And so even if you don't have a big, hairy trauma in your life, if you were born human and you came out of the nice, warm, cozy womb, you've experienced trauma. Let's just be clear.
Absolutely.
Okay. Right. And it's the judgments that we carry, the resentments that we carry, and the fears that keep us from living the life that we are meant to live. And another way you can know that you have clutter is if you are wanting to achieve some goal in your life. You've got some vision, you've got a goal, and every time you go to hit it, something gets in the way. Something sabotages it. Something takes you out of the game, right? That's just showing that we've got some inner clutter going on that's really getting in the way of you achieving your dreams. And that's why the whole premise of my business is that it is your birthright to thrive and experience happiness and abundance in every area of your life. And if you're not, there's clutter.
I love that. And it's very, and I want to pull on your point about the trauma. People think that trauma means a big event. Now, as you pointed out, being given birth to, that is a massive event. But throughout the course of our lives, we can all have micro traumas as well.
Yes.
And what is trauma for one person isn't trauma for another person. And
Right.
so you can't compare, you can't go, well, I haven't had this happen. Like, you don't know how life affects you. And so I think it's a really good point you made about, you know, it all layers up, and we all have trauma, and we do. It's just how
Yeah,
it
I mean,
shows
just
the
as
difference.
something as simple as maybe your mom picked you up late from school one day. To you, that was a traumatic
Absolutely.
event, right? You made up the
Yeah.
story that you don't matter and people don't love you.
Yeah, definitely. And that's another good way of describing it, so making up stories. We all tell ourselves stories. Now, you talked about the yoga, the mindfulness that you discovered at your residential stay. How have they helped you? Well, how did they help you then, and how do they help you now?
The stories or the miracle of mindfulness?
Sorry,
What was the question?
sorry, using the mindfulness and yoga to kind of transform your stories. How did it do it then, and how do you still apply it now?
Yeah, well, I mean, the most important thing is awareness first. Like the tool, mindfulness, is really the willingness to look. And it's when we become willing to look that we can shift things. So when we're, say, for example, we want to hit a result in our life and we keep missing, like something sabotages us, right? And we just keep We keep blushing it under the rug, but we keep going and wondering why we're not getting the result, right? We can either be blind to it, or we can make a decision to go look at, okay, so what's really going on here? Because I keep going for this thing and something keeps getting in the way. And so what is it? And when we become willing to look, it's like, okay, so what is really going on here? And it's the willingness to look at where things originate from. And what most people don't realize is that as human beings, we're like computers. We have an operating system, and that happens to be our belief system. And most of our beliefs are made up from 0 to 8 when we don't have a filter. Everything that we experience, we believe to be true. And so an event will happen and we have our experience. And then on top of it, we're meaning making machines. So we have to make up a story about everything in our lives. Like somebody doesn't text us back like, oh my gosh, they don't love us. They da 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 da, right? We make up a story about it. Is the story true? Usually not, right? So as a kid, we make up a story. And then that becomes our operating system. That becomes the way that we see the world. And until you can go back and find and be willing to look at where the stories come from, you can't change the belief. And so it's the willingness to look at where did this story originate from, that I'm not worthy, or I'm too much, or children should be seen and not heard, or money's hard to make, or whatever the story is, right? Going back to those moments in time and being willing to look at them and really experience the experience that we didn't experience then because it got stuck in our bodies, and have that energy get freed up. And then once it's finally freed up, then you can go write a whole new story. So for example, when I was 5 years old, my mom was a single parent and I was really good at pushing her buttons. And so one day I pushed her buttons so much that she actually walked out the front door on me and left me. And I made up the story that I'm too much to handle and people that love me leave me. Now that story created my reality for years and years and years and years. I kept bringing people into my life that emotionally abandoned me and told me I was too much. And so I played small. I let myself be a doormat, and I kept attracting people that would either physically abandon me or emotionally abandon me. And I would stay in relationship with them because I didn't want to lose them. And it wasn't until I went back to that moment in time and I let that 5-year-old version of me feel all the feelings that she was feeling in that moment that she didn't feel, experience everything that she needed to experience, and then say all the things out loud to my mom that I needed to say, not to her personally, but out loud to myself, but getting it out, just saying it unencumbered, whatever I needed to say to her, however I needed to yell at her, whatever I needed to do. And then letting my body physically release it, whether I needed to scream or punch a pillar or go for a run or whatever the physical body needed to do. And once I shifted and moved all that energy, then I was able to go back into that moment in time and write a whole new story. So now the story is, I knew what I wanted when I wanted it. I was committed AF. I was determined. I was persistent. And I was so powerful at 5 years old that I made a grown woman walk out the door.
Amazing. That is a great story. Now, when you work with your clients, is there a common starting point when you address their clutter? What does that look like, and what do you recommend people to do when they're trying to overcome the mental clutter as well as the physical clutter?
Yeah. So most people come to me because they want to fix the clutter. They want the systems. They want to know, they feel overwhelmed. They want to know where to start, how to start, all the things. But what they don't realize is that, they've probably already tried to get organized in the past. They've cleaned out the closet. They've cleaned out the garage. They've cleaned out the pantry. They've done all the things, but the clutter comes back. And that's because they're starting from the outside in, not the inside out. And so first I teach my clients the truth about clutter, which I'm sharing with you today, that it starts from the inside. And if we don't get to the root, no matter what you do outside, it will always come back. The clutter comes back, the weight comes back, the debt comes back, the busyness comes back, the unhealthy relationship comes back. Whatever the story is, it will come back if you don't get to the root. And so first and foremost, I bust the myth about going from the outside. You don't need the systems. You don't need the organization. You don't need someone to figure it out for you. You need to start from within. And when you do, you will spontaneously start needing to create order in your own life, and you'll find your own way when you start from the inside out. So first I teach my clients the truth, then I teach them how to become willing to look. And then as what I call the inner clutter starts to reveal itself, we then begin addressing the inner clutter so that you can free up all of that space inside of you. And because the outside is simply a mirror of the inside, When you make the space in here, guess what? The outside has to match. It's law. It's indisputable. So you don't have to believe in what I'm telling you for it to work as long as you put it into practice.
How do you help your clients to accept that they have to change inside? Because that takes a big shift, right? That's a lot of courage. That's a lot of discomfort they're going to have to go through. So how do you approach that to help them to on that journey?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I tell them it's not for the faint of heart. Like, this journey is not for the faint of heart. Like, it does take courage and it takes willingness. And I can't give you willingness. So if you're not willing to do the work, I can't help you. But if you are willing to do the work and you're willing to take the coaching, we start from the inside out and we walk through it all together. No matter how uncomfortable, no matter how much they don't believe it's going to work, if they're willing to do the work, they'll get the results. And I have so many people that come to me and are like, don't believe what I'm saying. They think it's crazy. They don't want to do it, but they'll do it. And then they start getting results. And so now they've coined it, that Mel thing is happening. That spontaneous clutter clearing is happening. So they've called it that Mel thing.
Brilliant. You should trademark that. Perfect. And how long does this process take for people? Is there an average time spent, or is it completely personal to each person?
You know, it's completely personal. You need to think about it like this. When I was younger, I didn't have years and years and years of accumulation. I mean, by the time I went from the cluttered mess to having everything, needing to have a place, I was about 18 years old, right? So from 15 to 18, it was like when I was in the treatment center. And so I didn't have a lot of time accumulating things. So what I will first say is the need to have order happened first. I didn't let go of the things that I was attached to right away. Things that took years and years and years. And I still have things that I'm attached to and still things that I'm letting go of. And that's just the way it'll always be, because we always have things that we're attached to, right? As humans. But most of my clients are anywhere from 50 to 80. And so it's been going on for years and years and years. And so you have to think about it like this. When we hang on to things that we're not willing to let go of, we become more and more fixed and more rigid, right? And it gets harder and harder for us to let go. And so the longer it's been going on, the longer it's going to take. I don't pull punches. I don't candy coat anything. Some clients work with me for a year and they really get off to a great start and they're able to keep going. Some clients have been with me for 3 years and it's just starting to make progress because of how long it's been going on and how rigid and how shut down they are. And so it's the practice that I teach my clients is like, imagine, right, that we've got this really big tight knot and you can't just go rip that knot apart. It's like this slow unweaving, right? So you got these little needles and you're trying to like loosen all the strings and gently untie the knot. And that's what I'm doing with my clients little by little. And the longer it's been going on, the longer it takes.
That makes sense. And if someone felt that someone needed help, how might they go about approaching that individual to go, look, hey, I think there is a bigger issue here. Have you got any advice around that?
If someone definitely feels like they need help, like the willingness to look is the most important thing, like starting to become willing to look and then reaching out to someone, to a coach, whether it's me or someone else, but getting support outside of yourself, because you're literally sitting inside a glass jar trying to read the label from the inside out as a human being. We can't see ourselves. That's why our outside is a reflection of our inside. And we're like the only species that comes into the world that can't wipe our own butt and walk in a few hours. We need help, right? We can't feed ourselves. We can't change our diaper. Like we can't wipe ourselves, but like we're the only species. So we need others. And so finding someone that you can work with, that you can trust, whether it's an accountability partner or a coach or a therapist, but getting that support so that you're not doing it alone.
I think I'm going to take that analogy and use it with my clients. that we're born the only creature who can't do it stuff ourselves. Completely right. I love that. Now, what's the future hold for you with where you're going with your work? Is there a vision that you're pursuing?
Well, my big vision is really to empower people around the world to get free from clutter inside and out so that they can experience their birthright. And so wherever that takes me, it keeps shifting and changing and evolving over time. And, I just keep watching all the breadcrumbs fall into place and where the Lord is leading me, and just excited to see where it keeps going.
Amazing. And do you work online and in person, or just in person?
It's all online. I coach people all over the world. And then when people are coaching with me, if they need some in-person support, I do offer VIP days so people can fly me out to them anywhere in the world, and I will work with you anywhere in the world.
sounds amazing. And how do people find you if they want to?
You can email me at info@declutteringspaces.com. You can just Google the Clutter Expert. I have a YouTube channel. I have a digital TV show coming out, the Mel Mason show, at the end of the year. But the best thing you can do if you want to just get familiar with me and get into my community is download my book, Freedom from Clutter, the guaranteed foolproof step-by-step process to remove the stuff that's weighing you down. You can download it for free if you just go to freegiftfrommel.com.
Amazing. Thank you. Well, it's been really interesting. I hope people reach out to you after they hear this, but I wish you well on your decluttering journey, I should say.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It's been great to be here with you.
Thank you so much.